Friends, as a teacher, I am tempted to talk about the real beginning of village study in India. Many of you may be knowing, but then the village studies in India started 50 to 60 years back, largely by the Chicago School of Anthropology in the United States. Do you know for why? This is to give a kind of alternate paradigm for anthropological study in place of tribal studies. Till that time, any anthropological study in India was a study of tribes, whether it is a cluster of tribes or a single tribe or a tribal village. It was the study of the tribes. Americans very intelligently thought that anthropology becomes monotonous by this. How to give a little bit of color to it? And they thought that there should be the study of the villages, which are much more complex. They are not monotonous. There are so many varieties. And varieties for what? Varieties for the existence of a caste system. Precisely for this reason, Americans, those who came to study India about 50 to 60 years back, they found it very exciting how to study the relationship between castes. It was a very complex issue. It was unlike a tribal issue. In case of, we are all anthropologists and we have been doing the similar kind of work. When we go to a tribal village, if we ask a single informant and reconfirm 100 times the same information with 100 other people, we get almost the similar data. There is not much of variety, because one single individual in a tribal society represents the entire community. And I have also done fieldwork among the tribes. You have also done fieldwork. If we ask the census data or the demographic data for one village, one person is enough. Tell me yes or no. From the newborn child, he or she knows each one of them. Recently born, a child was born yesterday, that will be also a part of your demographic data or census data, and that all of us know. This doesn't happen in case of a complex village study. The other thing is a little bit theoretical. Indian village was considered to be the part of a civilization, what we call the civilizational approach in anthropology. This came with the American anthropologist or the Chicago School of Anthropology to consider Indian village as a microcosm of the larger macrocosm called the Great Indian Tradition. And that was the beginning of what Mackie Marriott talks about the little and the great tradition. Of course, we don't believe in that little and great tradition, because I personally believe that there is no tradition which is a little tradition. All the traditions are great traditions. And I'm sure that as anthropologists, you share my sentiment that there is no, or we believe in ethnic similarity, or what we call the relativism, cultural relativism. So therefore nothing is small for us, nothing is little for us. All traditions are great traditions. So the civilizational approach, coupled with a little bit of complexity of Indian social structure, was thought to be studied by the American anthropologist, and that was the beginning of the study of Indian villages. But then there were several approaches to study it. For example, Louis Dumont came from France. I'm sure you have studied his book, Homo Hierarchicus. He came all the way from France with certain model in his mind, a structural model. Therefore, once there is something preconceived in your mind, your data will automatically fit into that, because you will only think into that, how to fit my data into my model. Similarly, the other people came. Bailey, for example, Dr. Otten knows. The basic to his mind was a kind of network analysis, and that was fashionable of that time. A young British scholar came and wanted to study the network analysis in case of a tribal village in India. So each anthropologist comes, there are functionalists. Let us take the example of M.N. Srinivas. What was uppermost in his mind? The functional integration of the community. There may be different groups, caste groups, but then how they are integrated to each other through their religion, through the caste, and through other kinds of things. Therefore, there are several kinds of models, whether it is functional, whether it is structural functional, whether it is structural, or these days, let us say the postmodern studies or postmodern approaches to the study of Indian villages or Indian realities. Therefore, when we study, why we suggested that you should study the book from page 1 to the end page. This is just to get the idea that what the author tries to speak about. There are some books which are typically monographs, in the sense holistic, includes all the 4 important or 5 important parameters of a cultural life. The livelihood pattern, as Dr. Misra Sarkar says, the livelihood pattern or the economy, social structure, religion, polity, values and morals, and so on and so forth. But then there are certain others, like Adrian Mayer's caste and kinship. The focus was on something else. McKim Marriott, the focus was on something else. That how the great and little traditions interact among each other. So we have to make a kind of subtle distinction between what the author wants to say, what is the focus of a study. The monographic studies are fine, which are more or less holistic, and you can make a comparison. I say this is a double synchronic study that we have attempted. Something which was studied 50 years back or 60 years back at some point of time, and now we are studying that. So this is a double synchronic study that we are trying to understand or trying to make, and then see what are the changes. The basic idea was to see the changes. So therefore, unless we study the book, some monograph, we may not be in a position to understand under what circumstances the book was written, what were the social or the cultural realities of that point of time, and what message the author wants to give. This is not a very simple thing. Unless you read it, we have read monographs. I remember in our masters, we had a paper called Monographs. The teacher was forcing us to read the monographs and then write a review out of it. And the teacher was saying you read it once, twice, thrice, 4 times, as long as you are unable to make a kind of review. Review is not a summary. There is always a confusion. The review is not a summary. In our book reviews, for example, in our journals, I find 99% of Indians writing reviews are summaries. But review is not a summary. Review is a review. How do you view it again? Somebody has already viewed it, and how do you view it again? So, before we go for field work, we have to study the book or the manuscript which was already written, try to understand every bit of it. It is something like testing the pulse of a person, what he is talking about. For example, if you are not familiar with Dumont's structuralism, what kind of comparison can you make? You cannot make a comparison. Or Tanjore Village by Andre Bete. If you don't know the Weberian approach of class, caste, class and power, unless you are familiar with Weber and Weberian approach, you cannot make a kind of comparison between what Andre had said and what you are saying now in the same village, Tanjore village. How could you do that? So, friends, there is a lot of challenge before us. I am sure and I am proud that my younger colleagues are capable of doing it. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind. Only thing is that they need a little bit of guidance, they need a little bit of encouragement, and I am sure they will rise up to the expectations of everybody. Don't get disheartened if there is a comment or if there is a criticism. That is a way forward to move. So therefore, don't be disheartened. Friends, I would also tend to make a distinction between survey and research. To this audience, I need not have to tell the difference between survey and research. All of us know this, but then what we are doing is typically a survey work rather than a research work. And of course, you may take excuse that ours is an anthropological survey of India and we are supposed to do survey work. I would say it should be renamed. And if there is an opportunity, and with your support, I tend to write to the government that it should be renamed as anthropological something, research organization or research institute, something like that. We are no more doing survey work. There are several NGOs, those who are doing much better work than what anthropologists do. You may not agree, but this is true, I have seen. Because this, even if it is a small NGO, there is a camp office in a village or in a cluster of the village. An NGO representative or volunteer lives in the village or in the cluster 365 days a year. Is he or she not a better field worker than we? We go for a week and then we make several pleas. My wife is not well. My husband is going abroad. I have to accompany him. And then we come out. Are they not better field workers than us? Are they not better observers than us? Are we going to do a survey work like the NGO people do? There is no harm in doing survey work, but we should go beyond the survey work. And this is called research. What is research? What is the difference between survey and research? Survey is what exactly you have done. Somebody said that in 1950, X studied Y village and said there was one bicycle and today there are 100 bicycles. There is a change. Friends, I feel very disgusted to listen to these kinds of remarks. What is new in this? There will be more bicycles, there will be more television sets. That is a policy of the government of India, that everybody should have electricity, everybody should have television. What is wrong in that? And there are several national channels. There is nothing wrong in that. This is not anthropological. You leave any damn person in the village, ask him to count the number of TV sets. He will count and he can give you. He can give the statistics to you. Why there is a need of a trained anthropologist? We are trained to analyze social, cultural, or biological data. Please ask yourselves, are you analyzing the data? And at the beginning of this workshop, I said we should move from description to analysis and interpretation. Are we doing that? Somebody said, the Saxena in the morning, he said that sex ratio has alarmingly changed. He never told us why. From 837, it is 1000 plus. Why? There must be a reason. There were 23 castes and there were 19 castes. No, 23 castes and now there are 19 castes. 4 minus. Why? What happened to them? And what impact it has on the general structure of the village? What impact it has on the inter-caste relationship? This is what we are trained for. This we are not trained to count the numbers. What I am driving home is that we should move from survey mode to research mode. We should drive from description to the analytical mode. And here comes the use of our brain. Do we really need our brain to count the numbers? No. But we certainly need our brain to interpret the data. If there is a change, why there is a change? If this is the direction of the change, why not in other directions? If we don't say, who else will say? We claim that we are anthropologists. We live for a longer time in the field, although in reality we don't. But then we claim that we live in the field. And we are answerable to the scientific community about this. So friends, there are a lot of things that we need to do. We will do that. This is the first part. It is much more theoretical. Please consider it as a sermon, because a teacher will always give sermon, but you might come out with your reasons why you are not doing it, of your problem. Sometimes you say, I don't have time. Sometimes you say, I don't have money. Sometimes you say, the file is stuck up in the head office and Panditji is responsible for this. So you have several reasons not to do. But then If you do it, certainly you are doing the best job for your organization. The second part will be replanning of this project. We have already exhausted the valuable 1 year time. 1 year is not a small time, friends. It's a long time. And with such a huge manpower at our disposal, we say this is the largest body of trained anthropologists in this country under the government setup. There is no dearth of manpower. And I can assure you there is no dearth of money also. There might be some bureaucratic delays, but then that is what we have learned from the British, and probably we have to continue with the same mode for some time unless there is a real movement in this country against bureaucracy. Anyway, that is a different thing altogether. What I want to say is that there is no shortage of money. There is no shortage of manpower. What we need is that we have to ask ourselves, ask our conscience whether what we are doing we doing the right or wrong. If you ask your conscience and get an answer and guided by what your conscience says, I think we will accomplish whatever objective that are given to us. There is absolutely no problem about it.